Can we go too far with gay rights? On this episode of Forward and Out, we'll discuss that question with a man who is one of Westchester County's and the Hudson Valley's most committed activists for the lesbian and gay community. I'm Robert Rizzo. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Lester Goldstein.
Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Lester. Thank you for being on Forward and Out.
It's great to be back.
Lester, please just tell us briefly about your background in the community, please.
Well, I've been working at the Loft first as co-president now for 5.5 years, and active with the Westchester County AIDS Council as well as the Rockland Coalition Against AIDS. And I travel quite a bit in the Hudson Valley, to Orange County, Ulster County, Rockland here in Westchester, and speaking on gay issues and trying to educate the public and build bridges.
Okay, and you're doing this currently? Not in your capacity as co-president, but...
No, I've retired as co-president. That's something
after
that's
an illustrious career.
Thank you. Somebody else has got that headache now.
Okay.
But I'm enjoying remaining active in the community.
Okay. Now, on October 6th, you were involved in a debate which addressed the question, can we go too far with gay rights? Can you just tell us basically where was this held and who were you debating?
Well, it was at the Ethical Culture Society. I debated a professor of philosophy from Massachusetts.
Okay.
And it was an interesting question, you know, can we go too far? Because, of course, you can go too far with anything.
Okay.
So, but it was an interesting debate, and it was an opportunity, I think, to reach out to a segment of the community that we don't get to talk to often.
Okay. And that segment being specifically?
The heterosexual community.
Okay. So this was a real opportunity to educate. Now, there were 6 rights that basically made up your platform.
Right. Well, they're not... I'm not the person who formulated them.
Okay.
I use, however, a book, I take them from a book that Urvashi Vaid wrote, Virtual Equality, and I think she has a very succinct statement, you know, of gay rights boiled down to 6 items.
Okay.
There's this whole myth out there that gay rights are special rights, and I think that we found a very good way to put them in terms that people will understand that they are civil and human rights.
Right. And within the context of the debate, how did you present the rights?
Well, we went right through them from 1 to 6, the first being the right to live and work free from discrimination based on sexual orientation, to be evaluated on the basis of merit and not by our sexuality, and to be free from unfair discrimination by our own government.
Absolutely. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
I think that's a good point to start out with, because this is an area where we have made some progress. There are 9 states now that prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, and the world has not come to an end in Wisconsin or New Jersey.
That's right.
The Federal Employment Non-Discrimination Act unfortunately did not pass. It failed by a vote of 50 to 49.
Yeah.
And but I think that, you know, that was the first time the bill was voted on, and it's an indication of how far we have come.
Okay. All right. Now, what's the second right?
The second right. The right to freedom from violence and harassment, and this is an area that I think that we have, at least in New York, have so far to go.
Yes.
40 states have passed bias-related crimes bills. New York, shamefully, is not one of them. I think that the Federal Hate Crime Statistics Act, which was passed and was renewed last year, is a good indication. The numbers there are a good indication of the need for this bill in New York. The number of hate crimes, not just directed against gays and lesbians, but against people on the basis of religion or color or age or sex, is just outrageous, and it's a shameful, you know, state that we live in, where New York, a progressive state, the Empire State, is counted in the minority in on this issue.
Okay. I mean, I know in some states there is an anti-violence division within police departments and so on where they're actually documenting, because I understand we need documentation in order for any kind of...
Well, fortunately, Westchester County is one of the areas where the reporting of hate crimes has become mandated according to the county legislature.
Okay.
And that is something that happened just last year.
And where should people be reporting hate crimes?
Well, of
To the
course,
police?
all crimes should be reported to the police.
Okay.
The responsibility to report them as hate crimes then is on the police departments.
Okay.
And even there, in Westchester County, we still need to do a lot of work to educate police chiefs and to have them, include education on what a bias crime is at the level of the Rookie Academy.
Okay. But the first step is people have to report to the police.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's go on to the third right, please.
That would be the right to privacy and autonomy over our sexual and reproductive lives. Okay. Again, without criminal sanction, there are still many states that categorize sex between same-sex partners as sodomy, as a criminal act.
Virginia, I think, comes to mind.
Virginia has, as a matter of fact, beyond the sodomy law, Virginia has a law that says it's not legal to serve alcohol to a gathering of more than 2 known homosexuals.
Oh, boy.
You wonder how a gay bar can exist in a state like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, actually, a law like that, oddly enough, is not enforced, except when somebody's running for office.
Okay.
And then we find that a lot of bars are shut down and people are arrested and harassed.
Okay.
We make a good political football, the gay and lesbian community.
Okay. Anything that you want to say more on that point?
Well, in terms of reproductive rights, and very often people do not think of gays and lesbians as parents or as having reproductive sex, but of course they're not thinking of our bisexual people or people who choose to use alternative insemination, and along with control over our reproductive lives, of course abortion is an issue. It's an issue where we're very much aligned, I think, with the women's movement.
Right.
And we think that we live in a society, of course, where abortion is legal, but the question is it available?
Right.
And a recent study, I think it was in USA Today, front page news, 84% of the United States counties do not have publicly funded abortion available. And many of those counties are here in New York.
Okay, I mean, in terms of gay parenting, why do you think that the society isn't aware of us as gay and lesbian parents?
Well, I think that too many of us are in the closet, so to speak. We're hidden. And I think that's why our movement perhaps progresses more slowly than other civil rights movements. If more of us were visible and out there, a friend of mine once said to me, if all gay people would turn purple, we'd get our rights a lot faster.
Okay.
But unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do that. We have to respect the privacy of people who want to stay in the closet.
Well, we appear heterosexual, so it's easy for us to sort of enjoy the heterosexual rights of society and not
I often refer to that, and I've read about it as the heterosexual assumption, and that is, the assumption that all people are born straight, and that all gay people, that homosexuality is acquired, homosexuality is learned, homosexuality is evil.
Right.
Because so many of us are invisible, I think that people have nothing to go on, really, other than myth.
Right, and that's how our movement is different than the civil rights movement of the 60s.
I think there were a fair number of myths. There were a fair number of myths, and I think we still see that with people of color. There was recently an IQ controversy, that there's substandard intelligence in the African American community.
Who's determining the standard?
The myths are there in a lot of communities. With ours, I think because we're so invisible, it's harder to counteract.
Right.
We have difficulty getting those role models in front of cameras.
Well, that's why we're especially glad that you're here today. Let's go on to I think we're up to the fourth, right?
The fourth is the right to family, and that's the legalization of gay marriage, and the right to have our relationships, the elimination of unfair discrimination against our capacity to be parents. Okay. This is something that's being resolved, I think, very slowly in the courts in Hawaii. Certainly, the Hawaii marriage is probably going to happen.
Right.
And that's where we saw the Defense of Marriage Act, come in the Senate this year and unfortunately get signed into law. It's very interesting that nearly every state has passed a law that says that same-sex marriage, is going to be illegal if it happens, or it is illegal, and reaffirming that it can happen. And I think, I don't think that heterosexual marriage needs defense.
Right.
I don't think that allowing homosexual people to get married in any way threatens anybody. I think, though, that our families do challenge one thing, and that's the assumption, that only a woman can be a mother and only a man can be a father. And I think that what our couples and our relationships demonstrate is that people can be good parents.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's not about our gender.
No, it's not. And that, goes all the way back to the drag queens, our first activists, who were out there challenging gender roles.
Right.
They did it in the only way they could, and that was, through camp and through theater.
Right.
But it was a very powerful challenge.
And that certainly made it less
that only a man is masculine and a woman is feminine and all of that nonsense.
Well, the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community does sort of challenge, the standard.
We challenge, I think, but we don't threaten it, because I don't think that any of us want heterosexual.
When delivered as camp, right?
We don't want heterosexual people to stop getting married.
Right.
And that's where I don't see where we're a threat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go on to the next right.
The right to health care, and I would define that, as Urvashi Ved does, as non-discriminatory access to care and receipt of services, and a non-discriminatory response to our health care problems, whether we're talking about AIDS or breast cancer or teenage suicide or other gay-related health issues.
Right. Okay, now what about let's talk a little bit about the Legionnaire disease outbreak and how that's sort of make a comparison between the way it was handled and the way HIV is being dealt with.
Well, if we compare, we can compare first the news coverage, for example, the New York Times, which is our nation's paper of record. But by the end of 1982, 2 years, into the known AIDS epidemic, there were 634 cases of that illness reported.
1982, okay.
Most of them in the city of New York, not reported in the Times, but reported, by the Centers for Disease Control. The New York Times at that point had printed a total of 6 articles, none of them on the front page, and you contrast this with 33 articles, 11 of which were printed on the front page during the outbreak of Legionnaire's disease. And at that point, when we go 2 years, from the epidemic, Legionnaire's disease had a death toll of 24.
So what is that telling us? Well, the people that were affected by Legionnaire's disease, as far as I know, were executives for top companies, correct?
Well, they were heterosexual.
Okay.
They were heterosexual, or they were assumed to be heterosexual, because who knows? But I think that it goes beyond the New York Times. The Center for Disease Control, which is the agency that you would expect to respond. After all, who cares what the newspapers print?
Right.
But the CDC, if we look at spending in the first 12 months of the epidemic, Legionnaire's disease was given $9 million out of the CDC's budget. AIDS was given $1 million. If we look at the top-level response, the President of the United States, 2 days after the outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, the President was photographed in the Oval Office having an emergency meeting. Okay. And it took 7 years from the beginning of the AIDS epidemic.
Actions speak louder than words. It was clear that,
for Ronald Reagan to even mention the word AIDS in a speech.
Wasn't a priority, right. Okay. Let's go on to the next.
Okay, the sixth. The sixth is the right to live in peace as openly gay, lesbian, or bisexual people. And openly is the key word. And this really relates to so many areas, but I think in particular to the military.
Okay.
This has been the response to all of our request for civil and human rights has been don't ask, don't tell. Right. Which my friends always say, don't ask, don't tell, don't know, don't care.
Right.
It's an attempt, I think, by heterosexual society to tell us to stay closeted, or if we're not going to be closeted, then they want us to act everywhere as asexual human beings.
That's right.
Heterosexual people are not required to be asexual. And I don't think that it is possible for human beings to be asexual.
Who would want to be?
Don't ask, don't tell means I can't subscribe to a gay newspaper. I can't march in a parade that's gay-related. I can't wear a button as a civil rights activist. I can't. I can't give a public display of affection to my significant partner that I'm taking, to drop off at a railroad station for a trip.
Right.
Not a hug, whatever. And this, I think, is, it's a response that comes from the fear that heterosexual men have of being objectified.
It's a heterocentric value.
They don't want to be a sex object. They know how they've treated women all these years. They've treated women as sex objects.
Right.
And after all, gay men treat men as sex objects.
Well, not necessarily as a sexual object, but as sexual. That is a part of who we are. It's not all that we are.
Well, no, we have to be honest and say that, a gay man is attracted to other men.
Right.
So other men are sex objects to him.
Okay.
To a heterosexual man, this is very fearful because it means that in a world where we're equal, I could ask, or you could ask a heterosexual man, do you want to go to the movies? Do you want to go out and have a beer, whatever?
And I have done that.
Do you want to come back to my place? Good for you. Good for you. But do that.
My brother's in the Air Force. I've boycotted the whole visitation thing.
And that heterosexual man is going to have to act like a human being.
Right.
And he can say no. And we look at, going back to the military, the vast number of women, or I should say the vast number of cases where people have been discharged from the military have been women. Have they been lesbians? I'm not certain that they all are, because it seems that a lot of them are people who are asked out on a date by a superior male officer.
Okay.
And when he didn't get his way, what happens? Well, she must be a dyke.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is where we talk about the right to live openly in peace.
So let's go on to the seventh.
The seventh, I think, is not from Urvashi Veda, but I think it's one that people often neglect, and that's the right to equal access in public accommodations.
Okay.
The right to dine in a restaurant, sort of like the right to live openly, but I think it supersedes that. The right to get the family discount, at an amusement park if you are a family. No matter what kind of family you are. Okay. The right to equal access to housing, equal access to credit, to joint property and so forth. A lot of that comes with marriage, but not all of it.
Okay.
Because not all gay people will want to get married.
Okay. So these are the points that you were debating, all very valid points. What was the basis of your opponent's challenge? Well,
his challenge was that he felt that homosexuality is immoral. And it's not an argument that surprises us. Well, yes, immoral and unnatural go together, although I don't understand how anything two human beings can do could be unnatural, because we are all creatures of nature. But on the morality, I think, the question is, and my response was, whose morality is going to govern our society? We are a very diverse society. We don't have
But that's just the question. Who is determining our morality? I mean, that's sort of underneath all of this.
Well, our morality is always changing. We like to think that everything is as it was when the Founding Fathers, established this nation. And there are certainly some fundamentalist groups out there that want us to believe that the Founding Fathers were Christian fundamentalists.
Okay.
And nothing could be further from the truth, because in fact they were all escapees. They were all refugees from nations where there was a state religion. And the one thing that they wanted to do in this country was disestablish religion as a state religion. They didn't want a state religion here. And that's why we have, in our Constitution, number one, the disestablishment of religion, and number two, the freedom of religion. So while I have to respect my opponent in the debate to evaluate what his morality is based on his religion, we're in the United States, if we're going to function as a democracy, he has to remember that he can't take that religious belief and establish it as a state religion, and that we all have to live that way.
Is the religious right trying to establish a theocracy in this country?
I think very much that they are. I think the Christian right or religious right, I don't like to call them right. I think they're sort of like the
Christian wrong? I don't know.
I don't think they're very Christian either. I think that They're intolerant of difference, and not just with gays and lesbians, but they can't tolerate the changing roles of women in our society. They want to go back to, and not really back to, because we never were, a nation of all, white people, where women stay at home and the male, rules the house and goes out to work.
Right.
I mean, nothing
enslavement of women, the enslavement of any minority group or any group that sort of wants to break through and express themselves for who they are. I mean, we see the fact that the states have to grant a marriage license. It's sort of a breakdown of that, what you were talking about, the Founding Fathers sort of creating a disestablishment society. I mean, can you give us some other examples of how this is in place? Whether it's perpetrated by the Christian right or...
Oh, tough question. I think that the religious right is trying to they're claiming they're going back to biblical fundamentals.
Okay, good. Let's talk about the
Bible.
But
I don't know that there's much agreement, even among religious authorities out there, as to what these fundamentals are. Certainly, if we look at the marriage issue, the Presbyterian Church, the Episcopal Church, Reform Judaism,
You're
the United
a Jew yourself,
Church
is that
yes,
true?
I am.
Okay.
The United Church of Christ all perform services of union for gay and lesbian people. Are these now not religions?
Okay.
The Metropolitan Community Church, which is primarily a gay and lesbian church, has been, may have been the first to do it. The Unitarian Church.
Right.
I think that we all have, those of us who are religious, respond to a revealed truth. And while we have to respect the right of people to believe that revealed truth, they can't use that version of the revealed truth to beat other people and to keep them down.
Is that not the nature of civil rights? I mean, to transcend sort of these revealed truths.
Exactly. Well, these same people, I think, who are opposed to gay and lesbian rights would probably like to go back, to where mistresses were established in the household, and we see that, in fact, in the Orthodox community. That there's actually a service now in New York. I read about it in New York Magazine, where they're providing mistresses to men, and they feel that the revealed truth, allows this.
It's fanaticism. I mean, that's what we're up against here.
Well,
in part.
I don't like to call people names.
Okay.
I don't want to call them. They believe a revealed truth.
Okay.
It's very hard to debate.
I sit corrected.
It's okay, Robert. It's very hard to debate somebody on religion. Politics is hard enough.
Okay.
I try, when I speak publicly on these issues, to speak more of the political issue and not the the religious issue.
Right.
There is, however, an assumption that they make in their argument of immorality and unnaturalness that's wrong. They're using a natural law argument. Natural law, they claim, says that the purpose of, like the song says, the purpose of a man is to love a woman, and the purpose of a woman is to love a man. That this is nature, and the purpose of sex is for procreation. But this is a natural law that is founded, in bad biology and bad psychology.
Okay.
In fact, it was written before there was a science of biology or psychology.
Okay.
I think both of those sciences have proven that sex between two partners has a lot of purposes other than procreation.
Okay, that's a good point. You did touch a little bit on the Bible. You mentioned that you're a Jew. Could you just talk a little bit about Sodom and Gomorrah, that it was related to hospitality and not homosexual perversion?
Well, as I remember learning it, I guess before gay rights, when I was a little boy, when we didn't know whether there was anything called gay rights or gay people, all of the lectures that I've heard, on the sin of Sodom, contrasted the hospitality of Abraham with the inhospitality of Sodom and Gomorrah. In the Talmud, there's in the Book of Ethics, as a matter of fact, a statement that the person who says what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. This is the middle-of-the-road personality. But some rabbis say, no, this is the personality of a sodomite, the person who says that everything costs something. There is no such thing as hospitality. If you want something from me, you have to pay for it.
Okay.
In the instant case, in the Bible case of Sodom, it was payment for hospitality with sex. And it wasn't so much this, the sex, because after all, none of us have sex like they had it back then. What it was a contrast, and talking about hospitality. What do you do when strangers come? Abraham ran out of the tent to greet them, to wash their feet, to give them food.
Right.
In Sodom and Gomorrah, is if you want to sleep the night, you have to pay.
Right. Okay. And you basically talk also about the Levitical laws. Very quickly, please tell us about.
Okay, well, Levitical laws, there are many, we're talking there about if a man lies with a man, it's an abomination. Well, there are many things in Levitical law that are an abomination. The flesh of swine is an abomination, tattoos are an abomination, cutting the corners of your face, perhaps the way I shave or the way you shave, I don't know which,
like I've done all of these.
Is an abomination, but certainly we see, a mix in Leviticus, mixing linen and wool is an abomination.
Okay.
This whole issue of Levitical laws and their purpose, it goes beyond, I think, what we can cover in one program here.
We want to you to mention very quickly the importance of activism. Where can people reach you if they want to debate lesbian and gay topics, and if they need a speaker, where can they reach you?
Well, if anybody watching is a member of a club or a society, a church, a synagogue, a school, where they would like a speaker to come and either just speak on gay rights issues or debate them, they can contact me at the Loft.
Okay.
The Gay and Lesbian Helpline, 948-4922.
And if they want to write to you?
P.O. Box 1513,
Okay.
White Plains, New York, 10602.
Okay. Thank you, Lester, so much for educating us this morning and for being who you are.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks for watching Forward and Out. Until next time, be proud. It's interesting.